There is more to your menstrual cycle than just your period. What happens from period to period? And if your period isn't the main event, what is? In this video, I'll answer these questions and I'll simplify the menstrual cycle, including the hormones and the phases. So stay tuned and become the expert of your menstrual cycle. Hi, I'm Amanda. In my naturopathic clinic, I have trained hundreds of women about their menstrual cycles and their reproductive health. And I'm excited to help you understand your body and your menstrual cycle better. Considering the average menstruating person gets 450 periods over their lifetime, it's probably best to get to know your menstrual cycle really well so you can understand what is happening and when something isn't quite right. So let's get into the menstrual cycle. It is first important to know that your period is not the only thing that happens within your menstrual cycle. Your period is just one part of this cycle. Including your period, there are 4 stages to the menstrual cycle, and these are regularly repeated at the same time each month, and that is why it is called a menstrual cycle. Your menstrual cycle is the time between one period and the next, and this usually occurs monthly. The length of the menstrual cycle varies for all menstruating people, but for explanation purposes, I'll use the average cycle length of 28 days. Today, I'm going to teach you about the 2 phases of the menstrual cycle and the dominant hormones for each phase. I'll also teach you the 4 events that happen within this cycle. Using this pie chart is a really great way to demonstrate the menstrual cycle because you can actually see all of the events repeating itself cycle after cycle. Now this pie chart demonstrates the 2 phases. So from day 1 to ovulation, we have the follicular phase. Then after ovulation through to your next period, you have the luteal phase. So the 4 events that happen within your menstrual cycle, 1 is your period, 2 is ovulation. Both of these happen within the follicular phase, and then you have the luteal phase. So just like before when I used the pie graph, here I'm using a line chart so I can show you what the hormones do compared to each other. This graph once again represents a 28-day menstrual cycle. The shaded area here is representing your period. This midline is where ovulation occurs. You have the follicular phase, which goes from day 1 of your menstrual cycle to ovulation, and then you have the luteal phase, which is from the day after ovulation to the day before your next period. The hormones that are represented in this graph are FSH, LH, estrogen, and progesterone. So your brain hormones, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, are represented in this chart by the dotted line. So we have the FSH by the purple dotted line, and we have this LH with a high surge represented by the light blue line. Now estrogen is represented by the pink line. We have a big increase in the follicular phase where it's the dominant hormone, and then it dips slightly after ovulation and we have another increase in the luteal phase. And then we have progesterone represented by the blue line. Now in the follicular phase there's no progesterone, and after ovulation we can see that progesterone is the dominant hormone as this is now being produced by the corpus luteum in the luteal phase. So this graph here represents what all the hormones will do in one menstrual cycle, and then they'll keep on repeating until pregnancy occurs. Now I'll explain this in the context of your body and the organs involved. When learning about the menstrual cycle, the obvious place to start is with your period, and as we saw before, this shaded section is your period. Day 1 of your menstrual cycle is the first day of your heavy bleed. Now some women may experience spotting, but this won't be considered the first day of your next menstrual cycle. This will be charted down here as the end of your current or previous menstrual cycle. Now that brings us to event number 2, which is the follicular phase. Now this includes the time from day 1 of your period right through to ovulation, and it's called the follicular phase because it is controlled by the hormone follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH. Now FSH is secreted by the brain and it signals to the ovaries, or specifically the developing follicles, and each follicle contains an egg. Now how many follicles you have will depend on your age, so anywhere from 6 to 30 follicles will grow and develop in response to the FSH. but one will grow and mature the fastest, and that will go on to be the dominant follicle, which will be the one to ovulate the egg. The other follicles will be reabsorbed by the body as a part of a natural process. As your follicles grow, they produce estrogen, and as the dominant follicle is chosen, the estrogen levels really ramp up. And when estrogen reaches this peak level in the blood, it signals back to the brain, which triggers the release of this luteinizing hormone. This brings us to event number 3, which is the main event, and this is ovulation. So we're up to the LH surge, which is being triggered by those high estrogen levels. The LH surge causes the mature egg to rupture and burst out of the ovarian wall, leaving the follicle behind as it starts its journey traveling down the fallopian tubes. So events 1, 2, and 3, period, follicular phase, and ovulation, are all a part of the follicular phase. And lastly, we come to the luteal phase. As the egg travels down your fallopian tube, this leftover follicle transforms into a whole new gland, which is called the corpus luteum. Now, the corpus luteum goes on to produce the progesterone and an estrogen as well. If no pregnancy occurs, this cycle repeats all over again. So the brain senses there was no pregnancy. The corpus luteum starts to disintegrate and die, and the hormones that it was producing, progesterone and estrogen, they now decline, which triggers the shedding of your uterine lining, and you see your period. I know there's a lot of new information and it can seem really overwhelming. So if you do have any questions, put them in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. And if you are learning something new, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. That brings us to the summary, where I will go over the phases, events, and hormones of the menstrual cycle. There are 2 phases of the menstrual cycle, and we will start with the follicular phase. The follicular phase includes the period. Here, the follicle stimulating hormone stimulates the follicles to grow, and estrogen is our dominant hormone. Now, when estrogen reaches high enough levels, this causes the surge of LH, and the LH surge causes ovulation. After ovulation, we move into the luteal phase. And in the luteal phase, the follicle becomes the corpus luteum, and it is the corpus luteum that produces progesterone and estrogen, but progesterone is the dominant hormone. In this video and my previous video, Anatomy and Hormones of the Reproductive System, and I'll put the link in the description box below, you now understand your 4 main reproductive hormones. And even better, you understand how they interact with each other and the organs of your reproductive system and how they make your menstrual cycle happen. Now, if you'd like to take a deeper dive and get to know your menstrual cycle better, I've written a book and it is free for you to download in a link in the description box below. You get 230 pages of hormone, menstrual cycle information, and information on how to improve your hormonal health. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.